I do think that the number one challenger for them in the West is no longer LSU. Before I thought, okay, still LSU, A&M, you need to prove it to me. I'm shifting, man. I'm more on board the A&M train this year for second place in the West than I've been in a while, and it's just because like they're staying healthy. They've had minimal opt outs. They had a guy opt out today, a
Elijah
corner who,
Blades.
yeah, who wasn't even a full time starter last year. They have a ton of experience coming back. They have some good players who they've recruited recently who are going to push for some of those starting spots. And this is an extremely experienced roster. The only real question is, can they create explosive plays on offense? Like that was the one thing last year. They could sustain drives. They could go on ball control, clock killing drives. But when other teams could put up quick strikes, they couldn't do it. Their explosiveness ratings were some of the worst in the entire league. And that's crazy because they were not a bad team. They just, they weren't an upper echelon team. Is it that important to be explosive this year? It might be a little bit less important relative to the rest of the league than it was last year. Because last year you had an explosive offense in Ole Miss. Now, granted, they were a mess elsewhere, but they were explosive. Bama was super explosive. LSU was the most explosive team we've ever seen. Arkansas, Mississippi State, we just won't mention them. And Auburn was basically just, explosive or nothing. I kind of wonder if being explosive this year relative to the league is a little bit less important, or maybe A&M's lack of explosiveness either will be remedied or won't be quite as big of a deal.
Why would it be less important? Just because there's less because the other teams are also less explosive?
Yeah, exactly. I just think relative to the most explosive teams in the league, if A&M just simply does what they did last year, I don't think the gap between them and the most explosive teams is going to be quite what it was.
Well, I'll also say this, and they did have the Cameron Buckley kid got hurt at wide receiver, so they're short one there. But I do think Isaiah Spiller, second year at running back. Devon Shane is one of the fastest players in the country, a true freshman coming in who's going to be kind of an all-purpose type of back. Aeneas Smith, who's playing some running back, but is a little bit more, again, a scat back type of guy. He's a pretty jitterbug sort of athlete. Damon Demas, who comes in as this 5-star wide receiver on the outside. There's more explosive options in this Texas A&M offense than they had last year. I think it felt like last year's limited depth at running back sort of snuck up on them. There was some transfers, some injuries. I feel like they've had time to build their offense around their skill sets. And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel, we're consistently optimistic on this pod today about A&M, but I think see more options for them to even, generate more explosive plays than they did last year. I think that though there's a lot of pressure on Jimbo Fisher to just be be an offensive guru. That's what you're supposed to be. And there is a threat right now to me that Jimbo Fisher has regressed back to the pack a little bit from an offensive standpoint, just offensive coaching. I don't know that anyone's got Jimbo Fisher's Texas A&M offense as the one they're scared of. And he used to be a guy that was just, you just associate that with him. And so he's got to make his money on that front this year too. I mean, do something with this offense to where it's more than just sort of a capable SEC unit. Shouldn't you Jimbo Fisher? Shouldn't this be one of the best in the country? I think they've got more personnel to make that a possibility this year. So I'm anxious to see if there's some evolution.
And look, I do think that, I'm going to defend Jimbo here slightly. His offenses are typically better than the surface numbers show. If you just judge his offenses on points per game or, yards per game, they're never going to look that special. I mean, even the year they had Jameis, they scored 1 billion points. But he runs his offense at such a slow tempo that it just seems plodding, right? And last year they were 127th in Bill Connolly's adjusted pace stat. Now, I guarantee you this year they will not be that because we only have 80 teams playing college football. But isn't this the year for them to push some tempo, man? I got to think they have more experience than anybody coming back in the nation who's actually playing in the Power 5. Almost their entire offense returns. Isn't this the year to use your experience together to go more up tempo, to not let defenses get set quite as much, to really prey upon and take advantage of the inexperience of opposing defenses and the potential fluctuations in the rosters that you might see. Like that's what I want to see out of them. Like everything doesn't have to be hard. Not every first down should be like pulling teeth. It's okay to get a cheapie or a freebie once in a while. And I mean, 127th in adjusted pace is, you got to like that. That's a conscious decision to go that slow, right? Like that's basically saying, hey, I think my play calling and me taking 40 seconds to look at my play sheet every time is worth it in efficiency. But they were 33rd in offense last year, so maybe not, actually worth it. I think you got to push some tempo this year.
Yeah, but and even in terms of yards per play, total offense yards per play, A&M was 65th in the country last year. Like that's like, I mean, Tennessee, for example, which I think for most of the season was sort of considered an offense that couldn't get out of its own way, at least certainly for the first half. I mean, Tennessee was 67th in the country. Florida State was 61st. Now I know that's a little bit different because they're 61st in the country in yards per play, and they're going fast. Like that's not ideal for
in a different
for
league in terms of competition. Certainly,
yeah.
I mean, although ACC is better on defense than it is on offense, typically.
But I mean, I think it's like A&M. And I don't know what like the threshold should be for good units in a season with 76 teams. But in a typical year, like this needs to be a top 20 offense, a top 25 offense in terms of yards per play. And
so top 15 is the new top 25 this year. As far as percentage wise, like if you want to be a top 25 type unit, you need to be top 15.
All right. So Jimbo Fisher needs to put together a top 15 offense. I'm not convinced you can do that. If that's the difference. Like it's on you, Jimbo. If you can put together a top 15 offense, Texas A&M is going to be contending for the playoffs. If you can't, then it's just going to be another year where you're, lose a couple games late and, look good here and there, but you haven't arrived if you're not putting together a top 15 offense this year.